Welcome to the World Economic Forum's Pioneers of Change Summit. 2020 has confronted us with change in such fundamental ways that in many parts of the world, all we aspire to is a return to some form of normality. But what the crisis has also illustrated to us is that there are true alternatives to our established ways of doing things. And it has also accelerated so many innovations, large and small, that were driven by people and companies that have seen an opportunity for doing things differently. And we need the power, the imagination and inspiration and creativity of these innovators to make this moment a real moment of reset for the better. We need to change the way we produce, the way we live and interact in our cities to make this transition to net zero emissions a reality. We need to change the way we use digital and frontier technologies to truly improve lives and livelihoods. We need to change the way we work and the way we deploy capital to ensure that everybody is included in this progress. And as this year has illustrated so dramatically, we need to make every effort that we keep populations healthy if we want to avoid jeopardizing all this progress. And so this summit will provide an opportunity for us to put the spotlight on innovators that are working towards transformative change in each of these different areas, and also an opportunity for all of you to connect with these innovators. But more importantly, perhaps, it provides us all an opportunity to conceive of how individual innovations in all these areas can contribute to the two large societal transformations that provide the backdrop to this great reset. The green transformation, the large-scale redesign of our economies for sustainability, as well as the digital transformation that truly includes and empowers everyone. And to do that, more important than anything, we need to connect the dots between these different thematic areas that we will cover over the course of this summit. So join us over the next days and act now for real change.
Thank you so much to my colleague, Stefan Mergenthaler, that did this introduction. He's also been the driving force behind the Pioneers of Change Summit. Good afternoon from Geneva. We're so pleased to have this chance to welcome thousands of you that are joining us for this important summit, because all the changes also can lead to something more positive. Great Reset needs great change. And we have a very good panel with us this afternoon to also discuss what kind of positive role can the private sector, business, play in moving the needle. And today we even had additional great news on the vaccine front. Moderna also have had the trial for their vaccine, and with 95% effectiveness. We had the Pfizer trial last week. So there are silver linings and there are light in the end of the tunnel. But we know that here in Europe, the economies are still contracting. We need more stimulus and we need a more inclusive, sustainable and job-creating growth. The panel is very well positioned to answer these questions and also share with us the challenges and possible solutions moving forward. We have Christine Lagarde, the president of the European Central Bank, also a member of the board of trustees of the World Economic Forum. We know that Christine is one of the leading thinkers also around economics in our world. We have also with us Julie Sweet. She is the CEO of Accenture, also known as one of the leading business voices in the world. And we have Luis Alberto Moreno, have been head of the Inter-American Development Bank for 15 years. He's a member of the Board of Trustees of the Forum. No, he's been out of the IDB for a couple of weeks, but he also knows a lot about the topics that we are discussing today. And later on, we will draw on Professor Cameron Hepburn, Director of the Environmental Economics at Smith School of Enterprises and the Environment in UK. Cameron, also welcome to you. Let me start with Christine. We have a lot of challenges ahead, but we also are very focused at this pioneers of change. How can the private sector also contribute in a positive way when we are going to make a great reset? Christine.
Thank you so much, Borge, for calling on me. I was, after all, in the private sector for 25 years of my life, even though I've been away from it for a while. Let me just use a little image of where I think we are. We were standing on one side of a massive river of uncertainty and hardship, both from a health and economic point of view. And we couldn't even see the other side of the river. Now, thanks to the fantastic hard work put in by some companies in Germany and in the US and in various corners of the world, we are now seeing the other side of the river, because we know that vaccines is on the horizon, and hopefully will be rolled out as early as 2021 first quarter. But to get to the other side of the river, not only do we need the private sector innovation and good partnership, we also need policymakers to do their bit. And we need that policy bridge to get across to the other side. When I look at the economy today, clearly we hope that it will be a crisis that doesn't last, but we know that the economic changes will be long-lasting changes. If we get the policy mix right, hopefully we will protect the economy in the aggregate, but we will not prevent it from being transformed. And what we need to focus on, in my view, is that those transformations are not scars, but transformations for the better. It seems to me, given the very special aspect of this crisis in advanced economies in particular, that services are and will be harder hit than the industrial activity. And the way in which transformation will take place will be first and foremost through digitalization. That will have an impact in terms of how services are provided, where they are provided from. They will tend to be probably less local and more from anywhere to somewhere. And in the same vein, they will be more challenged from a competition point of view, which will probably bring about improved productivity. Now, where the private sector is critically important, and that's what you've asked me to address, is how it will provide innovation, how it will transform but secure jobs and income for people. So let me turn to the first one, innovation. We just saw with a couple of fantastic innovators, notably in Germany, that there can be hope and another side to the river. Well, for that innovation to work, clearly we need to provide the appropriate business environment where innovation will thrive. I think policymakers are doing their best to remove the uncertainty, but it is a case that at the moment, the private sector has stopped, put on hold a lot of their research and development efforts. We're seeing that in the numbers, it's very clear. Hopefully the private sector will get back into the swing of things, invest in research and development, because in Europe in particular, they provide about 2/3 of research and development. So it's critically important that money be put back into research and development, and that innovation continues to happen and continues to transform the economic sectors that will be disrupted. The second area where the business has to do its bit, it's in the area of jobs, because there will be a lot of crushed dreams of those young people who are joining the job market and who are finding nothing at the moment. So clearly, the environment that will be conducive to young companies to actually employ will be vital, because it is those young companies, those companies that are under 5 years of age, that are providing the essential bulk of job growth. So from that perspective, if I could appeal to the private sector to actually continue to invest in research and development, provide for the innovation that will mend those transformations so that they don't become scars, and that they are open to those job seekers that are keen to join the job market, that are digitally literate, much more so than some of old folks like me, so that these dreams do not get crushed. You know, it happened in the past, and I will mention 2 occasions when it did happen. At the time of SARS, it precipitated an acceptance by Asia-Pacific economies of digital relationships, and it increased e-commerce massively. In the same way, after the financial crisis we had in 2008 and sequitur, we saw an increase in what the World Economic Forum has actually celebrated, which is social entrepreneurship, which is impact financing. And in the same way, we have to get out of this crisis now with transformations that will be positive, that will be productive, and that will leave as few scars as possible going forward. And I think Europe has a card to play in that particular game. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Christine. 2 short follow-up questions. One related to research and development, R&D, that is so crucial also for the future and competitiveness, I guess, for Europe. Have you seen enough of R&D in the stimulus packages that have been passed so far, or are they too much based on consumption and not investment? First question. And the second one, of course, you're probably tired to hear this question, but no, with the 2 vaccines and also things looking a little bit better, how do you see the bunching back of the European economy? We were definitely some months ago saying it's going to look much more like a U-shaped one than a V-shaped. Are you more positive? No? Are we doing enough to make sure that Europe is back? Or what additional things could we do?
Well, I think Europe is back. If you look at Next Generation EU, if you look at the Resilience and Recovery Fund, if you look at joint borrowing on the part of European member states in order to address the exceptional circumstances of the COVID-19 pandemic, Europe is definitely getting its acts together. And if you look at the way in which monetary and fiscal have been playing their role and leveraging from each other without being dominated by each other, I think Europe is definitely back. And I think that the dual focus that the Next Generation EU and the RRF have, which is number 1, green, number 2, digital, are clearly setting the ground for member states to identify what reforms, what investment, what directions they intend to take to benefit from the combination of grants and loans that are available. So on your first question, clearly the directions are set. The implementation has to follow suit and has to be in rapid order, but we are seeing rapid developments almost as we speak. On your other question, you know, we are seeing the other side of the river, but there is a lot of work that still needs to be done. And there is a lot of support that needs to be, displayed, and financing conditions that need to be kept as favorable and as conducive to investment in research and development by firms, in financing by banks and non-banks. So everybody has to continue doing their part, because it's still going to be a difficult journey, but one of which we see the destination now.
Well, thank you so much, Christine. Let me move then to Julie Sweet, CEO of Accenture. You're all over the world, so I guess you, Julie, have a real feeling of how the business sector is dealing with this unparalleled changes that have to take place also. So over to you.
Great, thanks. Well, as Christine framed it so well in terms of the private sector, we have to do three things. We have to improve our productivity so that we're able to invest in R&D and job creations. We need to be able to grow so we can create more jobs. And we need to do so for the benefit of all. And we often at Accenture, we call that a mindset of shared success. So I want to just share three numbers with you, and then two concrete things that we in the private sector both can and are doing. So the numbers are 80, 62, and 3. So 80% of the companies that we've surveyed in the last month are going to invest in digital transformation. 80%. Why is this significant? As we just heard, we have to transform. And so we are going to have significant numbers of companies who have to transform. And the question is, will they do so, and can they do so for the benefit of all? And when you started with your video, this also ties to that transformation is going to occur by partnering with other companies to do it at greater speed. And those will be large companies and small companies. 62%, that's the second number, is the percentage of C-suite executives who believe that as they transform, they need to have more responsible business as a part of what they do in three areas: sustainability, in talent, and in meetings, essentially the UN SDG goals, including inclusion and diversity. And so you have 80% transforming, 62% believing that they need to have more responsible business practices. That's up from 50% of companies just a few months ago. So the trend line is this mentality of doing it for the benefit of all. And then the third, the number 3, we did research going back to 2015, and we looked at companies who've already made the decision to be a leader in both financial and non-financial metrics, particularly inclusion and diversity, sustainability, and reskilling. And there's only 3% of the companies who've chosen to do both. And over that period, they expanded their profit, while the rest of the companies who did not choose that path declined. That should give you a clear business case that what we need to do as the private sector, which is to use this opportunity for transformation to embed responsible business, and that it can be done in a very profitable way, right, should give us great optimism. There are two things that we are seeing companies do now. So first is to think about this transformation by embedding responsible business. And so let me give you a very concrete example. Everyone talks about moving to the cloud. When you move to the cloud, you have a significant reduction in carbon emissions. And so those two goals can happen together. We are seeing companies now, as they're doing digital transformation, working with us to reskill their people at a rate that was not occurring pre-COVID. And to the point about partnering, we're partnering with a very innovative company called Skyhive that's helping us evaluate the employees of our clients, and then we help upskill them, because that's a core competency of how we did our own transformation at Accenture. And so there are many, many examples that we can talk about how this transformation allows us to embed the things that we just heard about are so needed. The second piece, though, that is really critical is the collaboration. As Christine said, you need changes in policy, you need the private sector. You also need the not-for-profits. We're doing work, for example, for apprenticeships, where we have people who have not been in the workforce who need support, more support than any particular private sector company can give about how to go into the workforce. And so we formed partnerships together with government, not-for-profits, and other companies to create these apprenticeships and provide the support. The World Economic Forum is a great example of companies coming together. And we have to have the humility as companies and as governments and not-for-profits to know that we will achieve more by having more open collaboration. And I think the pharma industry has led the way in the way they have approached vaccines, which has been unprecedented. And I think we are seeing today a very different way of partnering as a result of COVID, which gives me a lot of optimism.
Well, thank you so much, Julie. A lot of insights there. I was just thinking about the fact that if you look at the 7 out of the 10 largest companies in the world today, 7 out of the 10 did not exist 20 years ago. And if you look at the 10 companies with the largest market cap now in the world, 7 of them are in the tech business, and 20 years ago, only 2 or 3 were in the tech business. So it also shows how fast you're changing, and the world is changing. But as you alluded to, one thing is that you have to have a digital transformation, and then secondly, companies that are also thinking about more than just their own profit, but also caring about the environment, about sustainability, social issues, inclusiveness, are also doing well. And here I think it's also about talent. So my question to you, I know Accenture works a lot on this. How important is it for a company to recruit the right talent to go through these kind of necessary transformations? And I guess if you don't care about the second piece, you are not able and competitive to recruit the best talents in the world. And then you're not even able to go through the transformations that are necessary. Any reflections on that?
Okay, it's a great question. I guess where I would start is that certainly every company does need to recruit the right talent, but we take a mindset that first says, how can you upskill your current talent? Because it's going to be really important, right, that we don't leave people behind. So for example, when we are doing cloud transformations with our clients, what we say is, let's look at your employees, let's look at their skill sets, and how can we upskill them by working with us along the way, so that at the end, it's not that you're going to the market to get people who can do cloud, but you've invested in your own people. Now, every transformation will have to have a variety of things. For example, we're working with a company now that needs data scientists and analytics. We're actually creating that and then helping them, hire them, because that's a skill set they can't train people who are not data scientists for. So it's a combination. But what I think is really important, and what you're seeing from our clients, which I think is quite optimistic because it goes right back to jobs, is that the need and the obligation to invest. And by the way, when we started our own transformation back in 2014 to move to digital, when we were less than 20% digital, cloud, and security, we made the decision to make a bet on our own people. We invest about $800 million a year now, and it is successful, right? If you make that decision and you do it at the beginning, and that is, I think, what we need to do, particularly because everybody needs this talent. So it's also a smart business idea, is to make the investment in people who are loyal to you, who know your company. So it's a good business investment. It's hard to find this talent, but it's also how we need to make transformation really shared success for all.
Point, right skilling and upskilling also the current colleagues and employees is crucial for success. I know it's a tough question always when it's related to looking into the crystal ball, but when 7 out of 10 companies that are the largest ones in the world did not exist 20 years ago, what will the largest companies look like in 20 years?
Well, it's a great question, because I would say today we're living that every company's become a technology company, right? We started that phrase, every business is a digital business. And so I don't have a crystal ball, but what I do know is that we've seen the most successful companies are the ones who embrace technology, who embrace new ways of working, and as my stat before, that number 3, right, are most successful when they embrace both financial values and performance measures and non-financial measures like sustainability. And so I would expect that in 20 years, the most successful companies in the world will be those who do that at scale.
Julie. Luis Alberto, we know that before also you joined the IDB, you have a long career also as a diplomat, but also a knowledge from the business sector. So I think we're all also following know the developments in Latin America and also globally. So what is your take on the changes that are ahead and out of this recession and get a recovery sooner and not later?
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Borja, and it's a pleasure to be with both Christine and Julie. Let me say here at the outset that everything that they've said is only compounded when you look at emerging markets, because a lot of the things that need to be done by the private sector are very deep transformations from the way businesses have worked over time. In fact, if you just look at polls and the way societies view, for instance, in Latin America, the business community, they have been coming down. There is a tremendous anxiety in people to see business do far more. And this also is a time where governments and businesses need to be working on the same side of the table. So one of the areas that is critical is everything that has been spoken about here around meeting and accelerating the sustainable development goals. The issues around climate change and sustainability, but equally, as Christine was saying, the huge impacts that all of this tunnel in the COVID in which we're in has seen a lot of destruction of jobs, and especially around the services sector, which are basically jobs that people need to be out, need to be collaborating. And in the case of emerging markets, not every country has the possibility of having all of its society connected. So you are having this huge divide that we need to be very mindful of, where people, 50% of people in Latin America do not have access to this kind of connectivity that we have for a variety of reasons, either because there is lack of access to bandwidth, or the bandwidth that they get is either very slow and at high cost, or because it represents anywhere from 10 to 20% of families' incomes. So this change has to come alongside a lot of the innovation that is taking place regardless. Some of the companies that we have seen in terms of market cap, in terms of accelerating their value have been really companies in the technology space. Many of them are companies that have come from different emerging markets, which in a sense are leapfrogging a lot of what has happened in some developed markets. They still need the scale and the skills. And this is the other area where you start to see huge shortfalls. It requires, as Julie was saying, a lot of internships where you can combine both internships and apprenticeships, where people can begin to not necessarily go through the traditional education system, but really to reskill and reskill very quickly. And this is going to require an entirely different mindset in the way that businesses and governments work together, especially in emerging markets, as we see. And as that doesn't happen, there's going to be this growing divide. So this is what my biggest concern is. And I think this is the time, of course, to have far more collaboration. Is the only way to deal with this set of challenges.
Well, thank you so much, Luis Alberto. Collaboration and I guess trust. A short question to you before I'll go back to Christine, and then we have to come to the close. I'll then reintroduce Stefan. I was thinking about Latin America. We know it's the most unequal region of the world. It is also very hit by the pandemics. And there are two schools now for Latin America. One saying that the digital transformation is a great opportunity to leapfrog, because there's a lot of young tech-savvy people. And there's another school saying that winner takes it all in the platform economy. So Latin America can potentially then even fall further behind. Which school are you, or do you accept these premises?
No, look, I am more in line with some of the things that Julie was saying. I do believe there is a growing generation of new entrepreneurs that have seen all of a sudden an explosion in the success of their businesses. and in these business models, and they're much more connected to the world, and they have the sense of responsibility that I think it has to be channeled, and it has to be channeled with governments. And certainly the pressures of one company taking everything are there. But in my view, I believe that they can be a force for good, and I think they need to be incorporated in all of these discussions precisely for them to embrace the kind of principles, the kinds of goals that they should strive for, because this is what societies want. And you see this, fintech is a good example, you know, kind of because of low bankarization rates, you see this tremendous challenge. I'm sure Christine has been seeing it across the world, is how, you know, the fintechs are very quickly advancing in market penetration as you have not seen before, and they're providing services that were not there by legacy brands in the past.
Well, thank you, Luis Alberto. Last question to you, Christine. We have 2-3 minutes more to go. There is, of course, huge opportunities also in the world as more digitized, where we see these new technologies, but also it can create more frictions. We know the G2 friction, China-US is already there. What's the role of Europe in this? And my question is really around the geopolitics. If we now get it right with stimulus and in the economic field, how concerned are you that the geopolitics can play so negatively into this, that we will see less growth because of geopolitical tension?
Well, it's interesting that you should ask that, Borge. On the day after a massive and very comprehensive partnership agreement was signed within countries of Asia Pacific, representing about 2 billion people around the world. So I would distinguish here between what the business does. And frankly, when we look at the numbers at the moment, we see that trade is picking up and that relationships between the private sector operators in the economic sphere are actually coming back. On the other hand, clearly the geopolitics of multilateralism was not particularly good in the last few years. My hope is that between the pandemic shock, the climate change threats, and the most recent geopolitical changes taking place around the world, multilateralism will come back in a transformed and hopefully enhanced way, because we have to deal with some of these issues on a multilateral basis. There's no point trying to kill a pandemic at home. There's no point trying to stop climate change in the domestic market. Those issues, as you very well know, and as the WEF has constantly advocated, are global issues that need to be dealt with on a cooperative manner. And I hope that the business and the private sector can actually head in that direction, set standards, move forward, and that geopolitical games will come along and will put public interest and common goods at the center of policies going forward.
Indeed. Well, let's hope that. We know that COVID anywhere is COVID everywhere. We know the same applies for climate change. Common challenges have to be dealt with together to also address them. I think, Stefan, this is a nice segue into also you and Cameron. I'm told that I have to then move out of this chair. Is it okay? You can be sitting there. So, okay, they fixed the technology. Okay. Thank you to the panel. You've been great. I knew you were going to be, but this has been very insightful conversation. So, Stefan.
Thank you very much indeed, Borge. And thank you to the panel for setting out so clearly the context for this summit and for what lays ahead of us. And as we put our perspective now on the coming days and what lays ahead for us, I would like to bring in Professor Cameron Hepburn from University of Oxford to tell us a little bit more about how to think of all these different individual innovators and innovations that will be the focus of this summit, how we can think about them not as individual pieces or individual innovators, but as part of a much larger societal transformation. So, Cameron, tell us how you think about the mechanics at play here and what you see as the opportunity ahead for the community that is assembled here.
Thanks very much, Stefan. And while I'm doing that, that discussion was so fascinating. I'm going to attempt to weave in some of the thoughts. Jorge, as usual, asked great questions and I actually got some great answers. So, I mean, I think three big points here. So the first is that, as Christine made so clear, we have a period of massive transformation upon us and coming, and you don't get these that often. You have periods of kind of punctuated equilibrium in the dynamics of social change. And we're at a moment in politics, you'd call it the Overton window has opened, but in the private sector, there's vastly new and different and exciting opportunities emerging. Luis Alberto made the point that now is the moment to seize the SDG agenda and to make progress there. And I think this comes together with the recognition that if you're building a business today, it's never been as important to have a clear social purpose for what you're doing, because you've got to be seeing the collective challenges and then working on a set of the pieces that will add up to a better society. If you're going to attract the kind of capital that you want, you're going to have the vision that will attract the sort of talent that you want to your business. So I think this period of transformation, the Great Reset, it's also a great opportunity for innovation. And that leads me to the second point, which is that in terms of where and how dynamics shift, it does shift with reference to the great human needs. As you look back hundreds of years or decades, we're currently at a point where we know we've got to get to net zero emissions. We know that this is an investment opportunity of the scale of 2 trillion or more, $3 trillion dollars or euros every year. It's that kind of scale of opportunity. So if you're innovating in those spaces, provided you're nimble and provided you're, again, seeing the bigger picture, but working on your, what we call a sensitive intervention in the system, you can find these interventions that amplify, that scale up, and that can deliver really valuable change of the kind that we need, given where we are now. And we've been tracking at Oxford the ecosystem of new innovators, but also a set of 2,300 different fiscal stimulus policies of the kind Christine was referring to, because these two go hand in hand. What you don't want to do is to embed incumbency. What you do want to do, as Christine noted, is to create new competitive opportunities, but also opportunities which don't lead to gross inequality as well. And then the third point I want to make around these dynamics of social change is that we often have situations where society is locked in to particular technologies, whether it's the QWERTY keyboard that I have in front of me, which I'm sure you all know the story. It's not there because it helps you type faster. Let's just put it that way. But when you have these disruptions, when the socio-technical landscape is broken, you get opportunities for new ways of doing things, new business models, new financing models. I mean, look at the explosion of interest in ESG measures over the course of the last year. It's been coming for a while, but I think COVID has just helped amplify interest in, how do we make sure that financial flows across the global economy are being directed to doing the right sort of thing. And Julie really made this point very powerfully, that actually it's not just different modes of finance, different tech. It's not just quantum computing or solar getting cheaper or electrolysis getting cheaper. It's also different ways of working with each other. Julie pointed to open collaboration models and partnership models that have been so successful in pharma, but we're starting to see them being more successful across the board, because once you get systems leaders, the innovators, the pioneers listening into this discussion, if you're thinking about changing the system and you've got some sense of system leadership, then you want to be looking around the ecosystem, the industrial ecosystem, working out who you need to partner with and how and in what sort of flexible manner to move the whole system along in your own private interest, but also in the social interest. At the end of the day, if you're not generating big social benefits and you're not solving a big social problem, then your kind of private license to make a lot of money isn't really so robust. So look, they're just 3 points to leave you with, Stefan.
Brilliant. Thank you, Cameron. And maybe one follow-up question to this, Cameron. You are obviously tracking a number of different innovations and innovators that facilitate that sort of societal transformation that you're talking about. Is there one, and we'll have the opportunity to hear from many of those innovators over the coming days, but is there one particular innovation that stands out to you that you're currently most excited about, that potential for progress that we're talking about here?
Well, you're putting me right on the spot there. I'm going to get myself into trouble no matter what I say here. But so let me start general by saying that I think we're seeing extraordinary innovation in the energy system right now across the board. Big innovation in the quantum domain too, a number of big ideas, small companies, big ideas in quantum. In my personal sphere of interest, greenhouse gas removal ideas are coming at me thick and fast. There's one every week or so, how we can strip CO2 out of the atmosphere at low cost. I wouldn't want to rely on that to do this transformation. And of course, the food system is just undergoing radical change. We talk about a decade's change in a year. Equally, some of the big food companies are seeing that consumer preferences around food are shifting 5 times faster than previous trends. But if you force me to name one, I guess I'd say the thing I'm most excited about are the precipitous falls in the cost of electrolysis right now, because getting what is increasingly cheaper and cheaper solar and wind into molecular form, whether it's hydrogen or ammonia, is kind of the missing piece of a completely clean and cheap energy landscape that then gives the whole global economy a boost in the second half of this century. So that we're kind of the Victorians of the 21st century, building out all this infrastructure that enables us to be prosperous, sustainable, and clean, with the SDGs met for the second half of the century. So that's where we need to get to. And Christine's made the point that we know where we're going over the other side of the river. We just need to build this bridge to get us there now.
Brilliant. Thank you, Cameron. And because we put Cameron on the spot, shall we put the rest of the panelists also on the spot for their final point, the single innovation they're most excited about as we look ahead into this summit? Starting with you, Luis Alberto, is there one single innovation that you're particularly excited about as you look into this summit?
Well, to me, the single most important one is the speed of adoption of all the digital technologies for the whole of the population. And here, there's a lot of things happening in lowering access to people. And there's a variety of technologies that are taking place and innovations that are not pigeonholed, but on the contrary, serve the larger good. And I think this is the companies certainly that I see are going to be very successful.
Thank you. Julie Sweet?
Sure. So we haven't talked about this topic, but it's super exciting to me. As you know, supply chains were massively disrupted due to COVID, and companies need to have end-to-end visibility, and we're deploying technology to do that. And there is a great opportunity to use artificial intelligence as part of this end-to-end visibility to also identify potential human trafficking and other violations of norms in the supply chain. And because companies need to implement this technology, it can be done more efficiently so that at the same time that we're serving that business need, we can substantially improve our ability to identify human rights violations in the supply chain. And that is a perfect example of the opportunities that have been created by the need to transform more quickly. And I'm really excited about the prospects of this.
Thank you. And final word to Christine Lagarde. The one innovation that you're most excited about as you look into the summit?
Oh, I guess the one that we just heard about in the last week, because I think that it will be operational and that it will transform the crisis that we're going through, hopefully, for the better. And what I've read, like so many of you, is that apparently there's this new biology innovation in vaccination could actually have implications for the for cancer treatments, and if that was the case, it would be tremendous. So that gets me very excited.
Thank you very much. So with that, let me thank again all the panelists for setting the stage so perfectly for this inaugural summit. Let me welcome all of you that are joining us to the next days of this meeting. For some of you, we start with the community sessions actually immediately after this opening plenary. And so with that, it's my absolute pleasure to declare this first Pioneers of Change Summit officially open. Thank you.
Thank you.